But what time limit?
No time limit.
No.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So for the Q&A that has to do with the general prophethood, 3 questions that I received very quickly. The first one: are all the arguments for prophethood and multiplicity of prophethood based on the premise that Allah exists and His attributes? The short answer is yes. If we want to be logical, it's very difficult, if not, inconsistent, or does not make sense to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends people without proving first that He exists. So for someone to try to prove the validity of prophethood, the validity of a message, you have to have first proved that there's a God who has something to communicate to human beings. The reason why we said that, at some point I think we said, all of this derives from the attributes of God. Mm-hmm. In short, to make it very blunt, we may think it's very common or very evident for us the attributes of God that we're talking about, so we're getting very technical. The truth though is it's not that we're getting very technical. Because there are people who believe in God, but in the sense that God is the universe, for instance, or these different energies, or pantheism, as one example. A deism, as they call it, not theism, deism. So an impersonal God. A God who may not know that you exist, may not care that you pray, right? It's not a personal God. If that's the kind of God that you believe in, then of course you may not end up with the necessity of prophethood. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's why we said we need the existence of God first, and we need the attributes that we gave, which is it's a personal God who has a message to communicate that is compatible and aligned with His wisdom, with His mercy, with the other attributes that we explained. Then you can show that, therefore, we have prophethood. Because that is going to allow the purpose of the creation to be met. Otherwise, we can't meet the purpose of the creation. Okay, so that's why we said that the arguments for prophethood and the multiplicity of prophethood first require existence in God, and 2, they require these attributes of God. Okay, that's why it comes this late. We couldn't talk about prophethood before establishing God exists. We couldn't talk about prophethood before establishing that these are His attributes. Okay? The second question: for the prophets that don't have Imam status, are they still meant to be obeyed, or are they just guides? Short answer again, no, they are meant to be obeyed. First of all, we said that the topic itself of the clear distinction between a prophet, meaning Nabi, and Rasul, and other characteristics that the Quran and the Hadith give to the prophets, such as Imam and AlHasany, requires to do your own investigation and to reach your own conclusion, or to follow a scholar. Because there is no consensus, like a hard consensus on this is the only possible acceptable definition of what a Nabi is, meaning prophet, or what a messenger is, a Rasul. In some definitions there's an overlap. In some definitions it's very clear that it's a clear-cut category. We presented one that seems to be pretty solid, that is generally speaking well accepted by authors and scholars and both Kalam and Hukama and so on and so forth, the different schools of thought. So we said a prophet, generally speaking, seems to be someone who receives revelation from God. That's it. 2, we said that a Rasul, someone who receives, in addition to the revelation, there's something in the revelation that tells him, and you have a mission. So not only is there communication with God, but there's a mission, and this is your mission. This is what you shall do. This is what you shall go communicate with the people. This is what you shall teach them. Which may or may not be the case for a prophet. A prophet may be someone who reaches a status because of their purity, because of their rank. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala communicates something with them. But if that communication is not telling that prophet, go tell the people that I am a prophet, he will not say, I am a prophet, you must obey me. He will enjoin good and he will forbid evil. And he will preach and tell people, just like all of us would, do the right thing, don't do the wrong thing. He will do that. And people are supposed to follow that person because of what they are saying, but not that person unless they say, like as a person. It's not a personal following. I'm not following this person who's called X because they are X, which is the case for a messenger, because they claim to be sent from God and they have the proof to show it. I have a miracle and I've established that I'm from God, and this is what I'm teaching you. A prophet may not do that. So he's still a prophet. He is still in direct communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but he may not be telling the people, this is what God has told me to tell you. Maybe not. He won't say that. And that's why we have many people in our narrations who were prophets, but who never said, I'm a prophet. They never came to the people and told them, Allah has sent me to you with a message. Right? And so we have in some narrations, it seems that was the case with someone like Abdul Muttalib, for instance. Okay, so these are people who are in communication with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are being told what to do and what not to do, in whatever shape or form that takes. But they're not telling openly the people, I am a messenger with a mission from God. The mission does not go there. Okay, so that's the distinction. Does it mean that people have to obey the prophets? If the prophet says something and it's good, of course they have to obey them. But I'm not obeying him for that. I'm obeying him because it's a good thing to do. Not because it's him. Unless he tells me I am sent from God. And usually, based on the definition we're giving, this would be a messenger. If he is openly saying, God is sending me to you with a mission, now he's become a messenger. And in that case, that's it. You have to follow him because it's him. Not you follow him because he's saying the truth. That's the difference. You're supposed to follow anyone who says the truth. Prophet or not prophet. If I don't know that this is a prophet, how will I know that I'm supposed to be following them? I'm following the truth. And this person seems to be a lot more on the truth than anyone else, so I'll follow them. If he doesn't tell me I am a prophet. And so based on this definition, when he does that, and he says, and therefore you must follow and obey, then he's become a Rasul. Imam is something else. So maybe there's confusion in the terminology. So we said Imam goes beyond all of that into all the realms of life. What is the scripture of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam? Prophet Nuh. Interesting question. Based on my limited knowledge, there is no name that has been given to the revelation, the scripture that was given to Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. If we go back in the narrations for Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, maybe like a 2-minute summary of that part of his life, we are told that Prophet Nuh alayhi salam was the first prophet that eventually was sent to humanity, with a religion to humanity. So when the narrations talk about the history of religions, now we're not talking about anthropology or comparative studies. We're talking about when the narrations, when the riwayat talk about religion, there are phases of religion. Phase 1 was from Prophet Adam alayhi salam to Prophet Nuh, before he comes to humanity with his mission. So he hasn't said, I am Rasul yet. Up to that point, from Prophet Adam to Prophet Nuh then, that's phase 1, let's call it. We are told in the narrations that during that time, there were 80 different scriptures revealed to human beings. 80, let's call them sets of teachings. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, we are told in the riwayat, was well acquainted with all 80. He knew them, he had studied them before being sent as a messenger. He believed in them, he knew all of them, and he would enjoin the people generally to live by them. When he was sent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala confirmed to him, ascertained those 80 to him. And he told him, stay with those and teach those and preach those to the people. That was kind of phase 1. Let's call that phase 1. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also revealed additional teachings to Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. If you go to the Old Testament, they say he received 7 instructions. Okay, and this is where you see the evolution, because by the time Musa alayhi salam is sent to his people, he received 10 commandments. Prophet Nuh, they say he received 7. Anyways, if you go back to our ruwayat, Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salam, they say that the teachings of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, they call it Shari'at Nuh. So I don't have a name for it. I don't know personally of any name given to it. But it was referred to as Shari'at Nuh. Did he have a Sharia? He had a Sharia. We said a Sharia is today what we would call a code of law. Except that the Imams say it was not detailed like we have today. There were no laws specifically related to inheritance. There were no laws specifically related to these details in our system of law, because that complexity was not needed at that time in humanity. So they were more of a moral teaching on how you're supposed to live your life, in addition to calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making sure that people do not follow other divinities beside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's more like let's call it a moral system. Okay, that said, if you go, let's say, I would say, like, if anyone is really interested in Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, go to Surah Nuh alayhi salam and see what he was telling his people. And personally, I find that it's a pretty sophisticated form of tawheed that he is preaching to his people. Okay, is it the same tawheed as you would find in Nahj al-Balagha? Maybe, maybe not. I would say Nahj al-Balagha is a lot more detailed, because the people need a lot more detail now. A philosopher living in the time of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam and a philosopher living in nowadays has a completely different set of arguments, and they need more nuance and more complexity. So this is where you see kind of the evolution, but already the tawheed that Prophet Nuh alayhi salam was preaching, I think, is still extremely sophisticated. And he explains things that until today are very hard for people to understand. When he tells them, if you pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you are really sincere to him, he's going to reward you in this life. He's going to send the heavens he's going to send the clouds that are full of rain for you, so that your crops may grow. See the link that he's making between belief and the reaping of the benefits in this life, not even the next. Okay, so this is a pretty sophisticated type of tawheed. It's not just there's only one God and you believe in it, and we'd say they're kind of like very primitive human beings. No. It's a pretty sophisticated argument. And so you go through the verses and you see what he was preaching. And of course elsewhere in the Quran, but here you have a good sequence of what he told. Basically, this is when he reached the point of hopelessness with his people, and he knew that they are not ever going to believe. He says, every time I preached to them, they would put their fingers in their ears, and they would take their clothes and put them over their heads, so that they would not listen a word from what I'm saying, right? جعلوا أصابعهم في آذانهم واستغشوا ثيابهم وأصروا واستكبروا استكبارا. And what was he saying? يرسل السماء عليكم مدرارا. What is it? You want gains in this world? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the gains of this world. But believe in him and pray to him, worship him, and you will get them. Okay, so anyways, that's inshallah that answers the question. Okay, other questions related to today's topic or previous?
I think let's start with the one.
Sure, yeah, for today?
Related to the prophethood. Let others start.
Okay, yeah. Any questions? No? Okay.
Sorry, I was having a question regarding the one about Prophet Noah, about the scripture.
Yeah.
So, because we know that the Torah and Injil, they were like rewrited and everything. So, what about the true books? You know, the Torah and Injil. What about them? Like, I heard a long time ago that because we have Quran, you know that it's a miracle and it was not changed from the beginning.
Yeah.
But it's not the case of the Torah and the Bible.
So what's the question exactly?
My question is, because Allah sent those 3 holy books.
Yes.
But 2 of them, they were changed.
Distorted, yes.
Yeah, distorted. So, but I think that they might have the true ones, like the original ones,
yeah,
might be like somewhere, or might be kept like the original. I don't know how to ask.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Are the original scriptures still available somewhere here
Yeah,
or there? Or were they all corrupted?
Yeah, because
Like, good Christians, some of them do have, like, let's say, I mean,
some
not all Christians have the same testament or the same book according to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we believe
Is
in
there-
Al-Kitab,
Yes.
but those two kitab, those two ones, they were distorted, as we said, and some they can come and say, okay, your Quran also is not like it before, it's not like the original one. What do you answer for that?
Okay, so do we believe that they were all corrupted? So first of all, that's why when we try to, in the last lesson, what we try to do is to explain why there's a plurality or a multiplicity of prophets. And we said only one reason may be that there were distortions to previous scriptures. That's only one reason, but that's not the entire story. The real story that we believe is that the scripture that was sent to previous prophets is no longer sufficient to meet the needs of humanity today. That's the real reason.
Yeah, but they are still used now.
Yeah, so we'll come to that in a second. So the real reason, so let's say, I will start with the best case scenario. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals this book of set of beliefs to a prophet. And he says this is valid from day 1 to day 10. And starting day 11, you are supposed to follow this new set of beliefs. I can't go back here in day 11 and say, I'm going to keep using this. That's it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this from a time with a beginning and an end. And he said when this and this and this conditions are going to be met, this is no longer going to be the scripture you follow. So you put it aside. This is in the best case scenario that this is still intact as is, valid, authentic. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that set of rules and laws is no longer what humanity needs. It's not enough. Humanity needs more. So I'm going to send you a book that says everything that was true in that other book is contained in here. And we believe in everything that was sent here. And if you don't believe in it, your faith is lacking. Right? And we said that. As a Muslim, you have an obligation to believe in every prophet and in every scripture that they were sent with. And we say in the Holy Quran confirms all the truths that were before it, but مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ, but elsewhere it says وَمُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ. It's a guardian over it. So in case you're not sure, you don't go back to the old scripture. You go back to the Quran to see what it says. And if the Quran says something, and then you go digging into that book and you find that it's 100% compatible, you say, good, the Quran confirmed. And then you go see in the old scripture and it says, and this is what this or that prophet did. And you come to the Quran and says, no, that's not what he did. They claim that they killed Isa alayhi salam. And the Quran says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ. They did not kill him, they did not crucify him. بَلْ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. Okay, so there's a difference between old revelation and new. The Quran says مُهَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ. So you have to go back to the Quran, which is the guardian over the rest, the dominant over the rest of the scriptures, and see what it says. So while I believe in all the other scriptures, my job right now as a human being is to follow this one. And the reason is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, all the other scriptures up to this point are no longer in application. The law is only in effect from this to that date. This one is now going to be the one used until the end of times. So your job is to follow it. That's in the best case scenario where I don't even need to open the debate about, and is it authentic? It doesn't matter. 100% authentic, but God says you don't longer follow it. I put this law in place and I said it's only valid from time A to time B. And after time B, you follow the new scripture. You follow the new law. This is the new law in effect, that's what you follow. That's one part of the answer. Does it exist today? I think in part, there are parts of the scriptures and the revelations that must be true. And anyone who spends a lot of time studying them and reading them, you will see, and that's the example that I'm giving, you will see in a lot of passages and a lot of places, they're very, very close. Even better. Sometimes this is twisted around and they say so that it must be that the Holy Prophet copied it from them. Okay, that's one version. But why is that the only version? There's another argument, or there's another explanation, which is the source is the same. And everything that is the same, it should be. It should be very close. And if it's not the same, either it's because Allah decided here, I'm going to change, I'm going to add more nuance, I'm going to add more sophistication because humanity is going to need something different, or someone played around with it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the correct version. That's the other interpretation. Not he went and looked and came back and said, okay, now I'm going to change it this way, the Holy Prophet. He copied it, but he changed here and he kept that one the same. So why would he keep this one the same and why would he change that one there? Anyways, inshallah we'll talk about that when we talk about the Quran. That's one of the main attacks against the Quran, that it's copied from previous revelations. Does that mean that so that's that's the material answer that I would give. The non-material answer that I would give is that we believe that when Imam Mahdi Ajalla Faraja comes out, reappears, he will show all these books in their true state to humanity. And this is one of the arguments that he will use for humanity to understand that he is truly sent from God, that he is carrying. As a Christian, of course I'm going to be much more attracted to him if he tells me, and I am carrying your true scripture, the one that was revealed to your prophet, and I accept it and I consider this a true revelation from God. And the same thing for the Jew, and the same thing for all the others. And we believe that this is how the Imams had this. We are told that they would say, Imam Ali alayhi salam would say, if they would allow me, I would sit and I would give the answers and judge amongst the people, each according to their own scripture. And we have this from a number of other Imams who said the same thing. So it could most likely mean that they have the real scriptures with them. They know exactly what the books say. And in some of their debates with them, they tell them what's in their books. Imam Rida uses the books, which means what? Someone may come and say he's using it for argument's sake. Maybe. He's telling them, he's not necessarily saying this is a truth. He's saying, don't your books say? Well, then that's one version. The other version is, no, that's what really the real book said, and they know this. And so this part, it's still available today. So he doesn't use the parts that have been distorted. He uses the part that is still true and that they still agree with and believe in. That's the second point. The third point is, I would argue that, unfortunately, a lot of them claim, let's say a Christian, especially the Christians, they claim to be following their Gospels, but they're not. Their Gospels tell them very clearly and directly they are not allowed to eat pork.
Yeah, I was thinking about this one.
So they might say, I'm following. Are you really following? I'm much more a Christian than you are. I'm following your book and your commandments. How many of them are really practicing? Not a lot. So they've taken the moral values and they say this is a religion. As for the practice, slowly and with time, it's going away. They had acts and rituals that they did every day and every week and many times during the year. And the fast before Easter and all of that was very well practiced. With time, it disappeared.
In West countries more than...
A lot more, yeah. And if you are, let's say, an Orthodox Christian, you're going to be a lot more practicing, let's say, than others. But in any case, like they were very practicing before and now they are not. So this person, I would right away, argue back, like, are you someone who practices at least what's in your books? And that's one. It's in the Gospels itself, one. Two, the Gospels say that this is all in addition to the Jewish law that's in the Old Testament. So as a Christian, you're supposed to observe the entirety of the Jewish law of the Old Testament. So do they? They don't. So how come the Jews still practice but the Christians don't? And in their book, in the Gospel, it says Jesus told them that everything that was sent, I'm keeping it in place. And here are the things that change. And in fact, even in the Holy Quran we have this. The rest stays in place. I'm making some exceptions. I'm making some things more relaxed for you. I'm making some things easier for you. But the rest is the same. The rest of the law still applies to you. So why isn't it applied today? And this will go as far as the hijab. Okay? This will go to pork. This will go to all sorts of things that the Jews, especially the ones who practice the entirety of the religion based on the conservative interpretation of the religion, that's what they believe. So inshallah, with those 3 points, it's a good question. It's a huge question.
Question the Quran mentioned many times and repeated that the people of the times, like our forefathers or whatever, they used to reject and humiliate the Prophet and used to go against the Prophet and reject the message. I think the same thing could happen with our Imam of our time and so on, right? So the problem is, I think one of the key thing for us to make sure that we don't go against them is to understand, because like for example, we have hadith say that the Imam gonna come out with completely like thing that you would not believe that was a part of the religion. So that maybe you have to be educated or aware of the fact that anything that we have today in Islam may not be what it should be practiced, right?
Absolutely.
I'm like, it's funny because that's why when I question things not for the sake of trying to overturn Islam, but I just want to make like ourselves aware that this may be overturned in the future. We don't know, maybe it's not. Like there's so many things that don't know how that one ensure he would betray the Imam at the time. Because, for example, Imam Ali in Islam, you don't know the truth, but I think he said, when he was fighting Muawiyah on the Battle of Siffin, he said, don't pray, go fight or continue to fight or something like this, skip. And the Khawarij were like, no, we are going to go pray. But all the true followers of Imam Ali actually listened to his order, made like last time, but true sword away from killing Muawiyah, right? But he didn't. So what is the key thing? Is it to do the purifying ourselves to make sure that we can see the truth, or is it a bit of both, or what? I don't know.
Yeah, so it's an excellent question, and one that should make all of us think very seriously. In our narrations, yes, we do have that the Imam may appear with a religion or teachings in religion that, generally speaking, the people who consider themselves to be Muslims will say these are not part of the Islamic teachings, or this is not what the Islamic teachings say. And it therefore makes sense when we see that a lot of the people who will reject the Imam in our narrations are the scholars. Because those are if I'm someone who doesn't have that type of deep understanding of religion, deep / superficial, okay, because I think it's an accumulation of knowledge, okay, an accumulation of information, and I have that. So anyone who comes and says something that is different from the knowledge that I have, I'm going to say that's not Islam, right? Then there's the other part, and I think this is the part that is more important. The point of all of this, and this is exactly what happened with our Imams again and again, and it's something that happened with the Prophets as well. Sometimes there is a test, and the test is you are put in a situation where you have to show, do you really believe that this is the representative of God on earth or not? This is the test. If I believe that this is God's representative on earth, then I will trust that whatever he's saying, that's what I do.
But that would have been very clear proof that he is the true representative, because so many times in history we have had false Imams, right?
And this is where, so is your faith in this person stronger, or is your faith in your knowledge of religion stronger? So if my faith in religion is stronger, then of course I'm going to fail the test.
I'm going to fail the test, right? And if your
faith, I'm going to tell him that's not Islam. So that's why it's more important, and that's why we have in our hadith, Allahumma arifni hujjatak. Oh God, make me know who's your representative. And if you don't, ضللت عن ديني.
How can we know by knowing, for example, one step towards knowing him to know the biography, right, or the description of him, for example, or actually elevating your spiritual status
that would be the ideal, but I don't think that's realistic for the majority of people.
Very difficult
to spiritually recognize.
Yes.
So because we're not talking to, we're talking to the majority, we're not talking to the elite. No, there has to be material reasons.
Right.
No different than if a prophet comes with a miracle, right? And if you read the manner in which the Imam is supposed to reappear in the narrations, it's very clear that he will establish that. there will be enough proofs that there is no doubt that this is the Imam. There is no doubt that this is not a normal person. And once this is done, so even for you and I, we are waiting for a 12th Imam.
Right.
The rest of humanity is not waiting for a 12th Imam. And yet it will be clear to them that this is a divine representative. He is doing things, he is saying things that can only be from God. So while you and I, it may be that whole theological discussion that you have in mind, imagine yourself not having all of this. You are someone without any of that background, because we believe that the majority of the people who will follow the Imam will not be from within even Islam. From outside of Islam they will follow the Imam. How? It means it's so clear that this person is sent from God that you will right away go and say, of course this is unless you want to disagree and dispute and, create contention and argue for argument's sake. Otherwise, it should be very evident. That should be, and this is the point I'm trying to make, is this is why it's more important to know who your leader is than going into the details of religion. Because once I know this, that's it. Everything else falls in place. Regardless of what it means that they lift the Quran or not. Which is what happened in Safi. Right? So if my belief that this is actually God's representative, this is not time for me to start saying, well, maybe it is time to have a peace treaty with them. I go to this person and say, what do we do now? And if he says fight, I fight. And if he says treaty, peace treaty. And that's why he told them, Ana al-Quran al-Natiq. You are looking at the scroll, the material piece of paper, let's call it, that they're carrying on their spears. But I'm the representative of the Quran. I'm the manifestation of the Quran. But the majority of people did not believe in the Imam in that sense. They considered him a political leader. So if he says something, they have their own opinion too. That's why I say, what kind of belief do you have? If my belief and my trust and my knowledge is more than that this is the representative of God, I'm going to have an issue. I'm going to tell him, as they say in the riwayat, La hajata lana bika ibn Fatima. Right? We don't need you. O son of Fatima, we don't need you. We know religion. I don't need you to come and teach me religion. I know religion inside out. I know everything I need to know. Yeah.
So you have to go. I just have one more question.
I'll be very quick. I'll answer it short.
Oh,
Inshallah, it's a simple question. Yes, go.
If it's not a simple question, I'm not going to have anything get to it, but I skip it. So the question is, you talk about test and tribulation. How God said, I will. So there's a discussion how somebody say that there are two different kinds. There's a test, and the test to become better, or there's a tribulation that's to punish you. But my understanding of these, they're both the same thing. You can have a tribulation, but if you're bad, you're a sinner, but you're Allah punishes you, gives you tribulation. But that in itself can be a test to come back and do 180, right? So I'm just saying the tribulation is truly just a test, right? You don't look at it as it's a punishment, but you look at it as like so it's actually a test at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
So even
the punishment, sometimes the test comes in the form of a punishment.
Right.
But it's still a test. And you're still responsible for your action, and it's still an opportunity for you to get better and to get more reward. Absolutely, yes. So that falls under different categories. The test, the ibtila, is going to fall into 3 or 4 categories. But one test can be more than one of them at the same time.
4 categories.
Yes, so inshallah one day we'll talk about that, and we'll see how does the Quran present this notion of ibtila or bala. And in some cases, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just testing you. It's not a punishment. It's testing you, and test means harm. There is no test without harm. So you are being harmed with something, whether you see it or not, and you have to pass the test. Sometimes you're being tested and you're being punished at the same time because you did something and you deserve a punishment, which has its own benefits too, because it may mean that you're not being punished in the afterlife. This is a punishment. It may also mean that you have now an opportunity. If you are successful as you go through this punishment and this test, then you got reward and you elevated your rank and you passed another test, right? So you can have more than one, and that's fine. And it goes perfectly with divine justice. There's no issue with that. Yeah, it's a good question. Okay. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد